Hi, and welcome back to Abilene People. My name is Danny Sims. I'm your host, and this is the podcast where we have Abilene's most interesting people. And today, I think we got one of those. I say that every time, but I think today it's especially true. Jay Hardaway.
Hey, Danny, how are you? I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Hey, well, thanks for being here. And
Absolutely.
you are a candidate for Texas District 71.
That's correct.
State House.
State House. Your voice in Austin.
You're one of 28 people running for Stan Lambert's seat when he announced that he's not going to run next year, but you're one of several candidates.
That is true, and it does seem like they're just always, every day for a while there, it seemed like more and more people were getting in, and I actually had the opportunity to text someone else that's in the race and say, oh my gosh, make it stop. There's so many people running for this. Because
what did you think about it? I mean, did you think, oh my word, that's no bueno? Or did you think the more the merrier?
A little bit of both. I mean, there's an acknowledgement of the practical reality of one, no one's entitled to this seat. And anybody who thinks that they can do a good job is not only going to run, but they should run. If you think you can do it better than the other people running, then you need to run.
Okay, I will. Hold on, let me make a note.
I mean, you might as well at this point. But I also think and I think all of the candidates have reckoned with this, if they're being honest with themselves. The idea of, okay, this has an end date. We'll find out March 3rd in the evening who's going to be the Republican nominee. There's a contested Democratic race as well, so who will be the Democratic nominee? I think the idea of a runoff that goes into May, not only is it not scare the candidates, not only do we not look forward to that, but the voters are going to want their TVs, their mailboxes, their email accounts, and everything else back as soon as possible.
Because this race used to be, if I could characterize it, almost like a sleepy little race. I'm talking particularly the Republican primary, and then the general too. But last time around, Stan got primaried and it was a big deal. And of course, his opponent is running against you now, this case.
Absolutely.
And we'll get there. Plenty of time to talk about the politics. But you are married.
Yes.
And your wife either was trained as a nurse or is a nurse.
She was trained as a nurse and worked as a nurse until we started our family.
And you have 4 kids.
We have 4 kids. Yes.
And to set the record straight, not that anybody, necessarily needs to know or wants to know, but my wife has taught some of your children over at Man STEAM Academy.
Oh, nice. Excellent.
She speaks very highly of the Hardaway children.
Well, that's good. We try to send them out in the world to represent us well.
And Suzanne and I were at the West Texas Fair and saw a Lucy Hardaway entry there in the round building.
That's
that was
correct.
Pretty impressive.
So yes, we have with 4 children, 1 at Abilene High, 1 at Man, 1 at Austin Elementary, and 1 at St. John's.
So 4 kids in 4 different schools.
4 kids at 4 different schools.
Wow, that must keep you hopping.
It does keep us hopping. We are fortunate to live in the carpool era, and so we have different ways of getting everybody to school. And typically, the older 2 participate in carpools, and the younger 2 I usually take. So.
Yeah, and I remember those days.
Sure.
We only had 2, but I remember when I felt like I didn't know I was going to be a Uber driver.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, that's what you are.
And I don't have any drivers yet, so
but
we're coming up on it.
And that, my friend, is a whole different level of concern.
100%.
Yeah. Now, is your oldest a boy or a girl?
She's a girl. She is a freshman, and she's 15.
So next year, your baby girl is going to be driving a car, and the first time you see that car pull out of the driveway, just remember these words: pack of Kleenex.
Oh my gosh! I believe me, we're thinking about that a lot because we're trying to teach her how to drive and giving her more responsibilities. It's a weird feeling.
Yeah. And how does your family feel about you running for office? They okay with it?
They're very excited. They have known, particularly my wife has known I wanted to do this for a long time. But it's something we also talk about because as our life changes and as things get busier, we say, okay, well, that means we're going to have to take more things into account.
So you have been an Abilene City Councilman.
That's correct.
You ran unopposed.
I did.
And
Place
you won.
4. Yes,
You won.
I won. It was shocking.
No runoff.
No runoff.
And so you won a seat on council. You served one term.
That's correct.
And then you became the district director for Congressman Jodey Arrington.
That is correct.
And that is a huge district. Had to have been a huge job.
It was a huge job. 29 counties.
And so what do you do? What do you do as district director over 29 counties for a congressman?
So Jodey maintained offices in Abilene and Lubbock. So essentially at opposite ends of the district. And that's kind of the way a lot of people who've held that seat have thought of kind of the eastern part of the district, which is centered around Abilene, and the western part of the district centered around Lubbock. And so I went back and forth between those offices, as well as into other communities in the district. And
when you say we went back and forth, did you drive it all the time?
All the time.
So you were very familiar with Snyder and Post, and you'd see the Allsup sign at Hermley.
I'm telling you.
Go up the Cap Rock and get
all
to
of it.
Sladen.
Yeah, lose cell reception and then get it back. Yeah. And you're in cotton country out there. And I always like driving through Post, because that's oil and gas country.
Yeah.
And so it kind of felt like, okay, I can deal with this because the ag culture was new to me when I started working for Jodey. And I was fortunate to have a wonderful staff. One of the people who worked with me in his district office runs Rolling Plains Cotton Growers now. And so Lauren Decker, was a huge help to me in kind of understanding a huge component of that district, which is agriculture, cotton specifically.
And then after your stint with Congressman, you worked actually for Stan Lambert.
That is correct.
And I guess that wasn't really a full-time thing as much as it was probably a pretty time-intensive thing, because you were his senior policy advisor.
That's right. And one of the, between working for Jodey and working for Stan, I had the opportunity to engage in a couple of special projects, one with the West Central Texas Council of Governments and one with the Abilene Chamber of Commerce. And the Abilene Chamber of Commerce project involved the census. And so we got to work with federal people on that, and some state people, and then local people. And that knowledge I developed led to me working for Stan, primarily focused on redistricting. After the 2020 census, the 2021 session of the legislature, that was the big deal, was redrawing, not to be confused with what's just happened recently in the special session. That was just the congressional districts. After the census, as you know, we redraw all the districts.
Well,
Senate, state Senate, state House, Congress, everything.
So you do that really at the start of each decade.
That's correct.
Which was kind of the controversy about
right.
how unusual it was for
mid-decade redistricting is it's controversial.
Yeah.
And I think for a lot of people my age, probably some of their earliest memories of Texas politics, especially if you're from this area, is the 2003 redistricting that led to Lubbock and Abilene getting drawn together.
Yeah, and I don't know, probably just a quick question. We don't have to go a deep dive. It seems like that ought to be redone. No, I mean, why can't Abilene have, its own district, separate and apart from Lubbock?
I think that is always at the forefront of the minds of people in Abilene, and not just Abilene, but people in Jones County, and a few in Jones County specifically because of Congressman Stenholm. But I think that the realities of the population geography in this part of Texas, if we're not tied to the west, we're probably going to be tied to the east. And when you put it that way and you say, okay, would you rather us be pulled on by Fort Worth or by Lubbock? And I don't know if it's just because there's a bunch of Red Raiders here, or because it's the the South Plains and the big country.
Kind of West Texas.
People just kind of feel like, okay, we can do West Texas, and that would be true if we were talking about Midland and Odessa. It'd be true if we're talking about San Angelo, and then similarly though, if you start thinking about South, then you feel that Golden Triangle pull of San Antonio and Austin, and so it's just, I mean, part of it's just where we're located on the map. Part of it's population growth. It's I think every city, every town would love to have their own member of Congress, and that will never go away.
Right,
Yeah.
right, for sure. And I want to talk about some of the things you've got on your website for priorities,
Certainly.
and policy things.
Absolutely.
But before we get there, though, I want to go for the ultimate softball question.
Oh my goodness.
Which, well, no, it's a good one. Why in the world are you doing this? Okay, because look, this job you're seeking is very time intensive.
Very.
This job you're seeking doesn't pay a lot.
Nope.
This job you're seeking really isn't glamorous.
No, it's not.
This job you're seeking recently has had the crosshairs of, that's probably a very poor, I kind of rephrase that. It had the attention of a lot of people outside District 71.
Right.
So a lot of heat attached to it. So tell us why you're doing this.
Absolutely. I got to participate in an interview here with Big Country Politics, and I said, this is something I've wanted to do most of my life. And when I think that ended up being one of the headline of the interview. And when it was posted on social media, somebody said, "Oh, I would never vote for somebody who felt that way." And
Wait, clarify for that. You're seriously, somebody said, like, in a social media space, they would never vote for somebody that they wanted to do this their whole life.
Absolutely. And I understand, nobody understands mistrust of government more than people who've worked in government. But I also believe in being upfront and honest, that I think that this work is noble. It doesn't always come across that way. It's not always noble people that are doing it, but it is meant to be noble. And it is meant to be about service. It's meant to be about helping your community. And I say all the time, service isn't a sinecure. It's not supposed to be something you do your whole life. It's not supposed to be a career. It's supposed to be something you do because you think you can be helpful, because you want to advocate, because you want to represent, and then you go home. And one of the things that's always pulled me in state politics is that the system in Texas was set up to be that way. The system in D.C. arguably was too, right? We're all looking to the Roman Republic. Cincinnatus puts down the plow, picks up the sword, serves Rome, goes home, and lives under the laws that were created, right?
Well, that's what everybody in D.C. does, Jay.
Sure,
After
absolutely.
60 years.
Absolutely. And so I think that state politics in Texas lends itself to that. It's not unusual, and I'm not just talking about House District 71. Any state legislator, whether they're in the state house or the state senate, it's not unusual to see those people in the grocery store. It's not unusual to see, they're not having to shuttle back and forth to D.C. Most of them are having to drive to Austin. And, if you're meeting 130 days every 2 years, it gives you a lot of time to be back home. And you're living under the laws you passed. And so I think that had a lot of appeal to me, because I'm always going to be a stakeholder in this area, in the Big Country. A family business here. I live here. My kids go to school here. My wife and I were both born and raised here. We moved back by choice, not because we had to, though. Getting a call from your grandfather and saying, "You're going to come work for me now," does have a strong pull, but we wanted to make our lives here. And so, in the private sector, we talk a lot about alignment. I feel very aligned with House District 71.
So if you're successful and you win, I'm sure you've thought through this, the dynamics of those times when session is in, you're going to essentially be not just really on the road as much as, well, you'll be on the road a lot, but you're going to be living, a week at a time in Austin.
Absolutely.
So
that'll be different.
That'll be different. Yeah, it's just a different lifestyle. But you're familiar. You're familiar with the pace. You've seen it.
Familiar with the pace. Lived in Austin when not long after my wife and I got married. We moved to Austin and worked there, and not in government, in the private sector. And we came back here a lot. And as we made the decision to move back, my wife would drive with my oldest daughter at the time back here to look for houses and things like that. And we kind of did the back and forth lifestyle there for a little while, and then working 2 legislative sessions for Representative Lambert. I'd go down to Austin when I could and come back and go back down. And I tell you, he doesn't talk about it very much, but Stan Lambert is a road warrior. And if there was no need for him, if they would, be on recess or something like that, he wouldn't hesitate to come back home. Even if it was late at night, even when you might have to drive back early Monday morning. So I think that in Austin in general, for guys that feel like it's not too bad of a drive, I think that kind of thing is not unusual.
Imagine though, if you're serving in Austin and you're from the way up north in the Panhandle or way down south in the Valley, that's a whole different deal,
Whole different deal.
Those guys, man.
I remember when Rick Perry was running for president, and he was the governor of Texas at the time, but he'd been a state representative from around Haskell. That's how he first got into politics. And I remember people locally talking about how he used to fly from the Abilene airport in probably a prop plane. He would fly to Austin and fly back because that was just the most efficient way to do it at the time. And because he could, fly a plane, that was the way he did it. I don't know if a lot of people do that or not. I will not be doing that. I'll be burning up the highway, stopping in along the way somewhere, stopping at Storm's Hamburgers in Lampasas or something like that.
It's a good choice.
It's
a good choice. Storms.
It's great.
Yeah.
And so, it will be different, and it will be, we'll have to make accommodations for it. But my family's excited about it. I'm excited about it, and I make no bones about the fact that this is something I have wanted to do. It's important to me, and I'm excited for the opportunity. I can't believe you
said that. I was going to vote for you till you said that. I would
Okay.
never vote for somebody.
Never vote for somebody that would say
wants
that.
to do
Yes.
it. Okay,
Yes.
so you have on your website 6 fairly general, but really very clear policy positions or concerns, issues and priorities, I think is what you call them on your website. I'm gonna quickly mention 4, but I want to focus on 2 in the conversation.
Certainly.
Is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
You talk about property tax relief. I get the sense that's something that you know a lot about.
Certainly serving on council has helped. And I have, unfortunate thing about a website, but the great thing about a campaign is that you kind of have to throw out some things that you care about, some issue positions. But, I want to write 20 paragraphs about what I think about each of those issues. But people aren't going to read that. The good thing is I'll get the opportunity to engage with people and talk about them, interviews like this, social media, and I'll get to flesh those out, which I'm excited about.
You talk about securing the border, which I doubt there's anybody running for office, particularly in this area of the country, that's not talking about securing the border.
100%.
Yeah. And I will just say, having served in the nonprofit world in humanitarian aid and working directly with people that came across the border, there's some really sad, heartbreaking stories of people who come over seeking, status of somebody who's, if they stay at home, is probably going to die. And it's really a sad thing. And I think for those of us that born and lived in America most of our lives, it really takes traveling around the world or going to the border to really understand just how desperate some people are to get into the country that we tend to take for granted.
I think that's absolutely true. And I like the way you put that. I think even well-traveled people that tend to go to, it's unfair to say touristy places, but they tend to go to the places you go when you travel the world. Maybe we're going to go to Paris, or you're going to go to Hawaii, or you're going to go someplace like that, or you're going to go to Las Vegas. And this idea, okay, you've been a lot of different places, but you're isolated from what's happening in those places if you just stay at a hotel, or if you go to San Antonio and you just go to the Alamo and you go to SeaWorld and then you go home. What can you say about San Antonio?
You haven't really seen San Antonio.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's certainly true about areas of the world where people are wanting to come somewhere else for some kind of opportunity.
And I think most people agree that we have to keep the criminal element out, and securing the border in that sense. I mean, come on, we can do better.
Certainly. And I think you nailed it when you say, and then this is true of all of my policy positions, that none of them would surprise anyone who's like, oh, this is a Republican running for office in Texas. And I think that, while there are certainly divisions in the Republican Party, probably about any number of things, same with the Democratic Party, the policy priorities of the Republican Party in general are almost universally consistent across candidates.
Well, jobs and growth, you talk about private property rights. And then the two I wanted to talk, touchstones I wanted to talk about, you talk about strong schools and you talk about life and liberty. I want to get into life and liberty in a minute, but about strong schools, you obviously have experience in private schools. I think you graduated from a private high school. You have children who I think maybe your youngest is going to a private school now, but you also have investment in public schools.
100%. And my wife is a product of exclusively public schools.
Abilene High.
Abilene High, Austin Elementary, Lincoln Middle School, and she went to Texas Tech for college. So,
and your three daughters are at
AISD schools. They also have attended St. John's.
So what do you think? We don't have to get into the granular policy things. To be candid, I think most people are kind of sick of the school choice conversation by now. But just broadly speaking, what do you think? Do you think that there's some positive things about that? Do you think there's also potential negative things about it?
I think it is safe to say that whenever the government tries to undertake anything, people should be, okay, but what if it doesn't work and then we can't undo it? Or what if, it leads to this? And so I think, especially in West Texas, but it's probably true of a lot of places, that you will find people across the political spectrum that are skeptical of anything big. And when the government does things, it's big. And so I definitely think that I think you're right that people maybe got a little tired of the back and forth. But I think that most people realize that situation from a policy standpoint is complicated, and that there may not be a one size fits all solution. And to credit of pretty much any policymaker in Texas, I don't think anyone made that argument that, hey, we're going to do this and it's going to work for every school and everything's going to be perfect and we'll just take our victory lap and go home. We have in the last regular session passed this bill that's going to attempt to give some choice to parents in Texas. It's small steps in the direction that I think people want to take at the statewide level on this issue, and so we'll see how it works. I think that the voters have spoken about how they feel about it, and they've been heard by the policymakers, and there was a good faith effort this last session to come up with a plan that everybody could live with. And now it'll be incumbent on future sessions to implement that, to make fixes where necessary, because I don't think anyone who really thinks about this issue thinks that, it'll definitely work in urban schools, but it'll work exactly the same in rural schools. No, I think that there's, and admittedly, the access to those accounts is tiered based on need. And so we'll see how it goes. I think it's a good opportunity to see how this is all going to work.
So about life and liberty, you mentioned specifically protecting the unborn, and then you talk about the Second Amendment. And I want to, with apologies to anybody that would love to do a deep dive into the conversation about the unborn. I really want to talk about the Second Amendment, and the reason I do is because I don't really believe, particularly in District 71 in Texas, anybody is wanting to take people's guns away. I believe the amendments that I would love somebody to talk about would be the First Amendment and the Fifth Amendment, because and it may be unfair for me to characterize something and then say, what do you think? Because I'm not running for office.
Right.
So, but it is a podcast. It's a conversation.
Hey, it's your podcast.
Well,
so
but I want to treat it more like yours. What do you think? I just am a little concerned that I'm not concerned at all about gun rights. And I'm just personally not. And you may want to talk about that, but I'm much more concerned about free speech today, particularly. And I am concerned about due process. today, particularly. We have seen in our culture at large, people being told that they can't say certain things. Even if there are consequences to saying something, you still have a right to say it. To preemptively tell somebody they can't say something, almost like calling out the thought police, man, that to me isn't America. And then conversely, or not conversely necessarily, but I just want to quickly say, I really am getting to turning it over to you.
No,
Really
you're good. You're good.
I just want to also say that we have seen masked federal agents grabbing people, pushing them in vans without a search warrant, driving them off. The person disappears for 2 or 3 or more days, sometimes ending up in a foreign country in a prison down there. Again, that doesn't seem like America. To me, those amendments need attention as much as the Second Amendment. So that's a lot. That's a big plate of spaghetti.
Sure.
So there. What do you think?
All right. Well, I think.
Thank you for joining us today on our podcast.
I think that I'll try to make a universal comment, and then I'll try to maybe attack each of those
Beautiful.
Individually. I think that in general, in America specifically, history has not been and will not be kind to anyone who tries to trample on the constitutional rights of an American citizen. That doesn't mean that there's not cases where that may be, something that people feel is necessary at the time, because it certainly happened. But I think that there is an inherent skepticism of anyone trying to curtail those God-given rights of anyone else. Now, I think that it's more nuanced than that at several levels, because people bring up issues. Well, you mentioned the Fifth Amendment. People bring up issues that, okay, but I would say that in an effort to solve what people feel like I think is the major issue with the border is the idea that people are coming to the United States illegally, and there's no knowledge about them. There's no background checks. There's no, where are these people going? What are they going to do? Who are they? What did they do back home? I think those unknowns frighten people, and rightfully so. And so I think that if you break the law in a country, you're going to be deprived of some of your rights. And
but due process is a right extended to everybody on our soil,
right?
Which is the right to an attorney, the right for due process, the right for a legal process to be adjudicated
Certainly.
in a court.
And I think that there's a feeling in this country that so many Americans are being deprived of different rights and different, access to things that maybe they sort of taken for granted. And I think people really want to see something done about people who are in this country illegally.
I totally agree.
I think that I don't know that anyone at any level is comfortable with, federal law enforcement, arresting people or doing anything like that. I mean, I think that everybody's like, oh no, that's a really big deal. That must be really important. But I do think that there's an expectation that the federal government do their job. And I think no matter what size you think the government should be, whether you believe in a, cradle to grave kind of nanny state, or if you believe in kind of a night watchman state that really only does one thing, everybody agrees that that one thing is protect the safety and security of the citizenry, specifically as it regards the country's sovereign borders. And so I think what you're seeing from the administration in Washington, but from people who are in support of this, is to say enough is enough. We need to secure the border. And if people are here illegally, particularly if they're breaking the law or if they broke the law in their home country, they should not be here and they need to go back to their home country.
So what do you, and I'm tempted to respond because I have a very positive reaction to what you're saying, because I do get that, and I really do understand and agree. with all the concerns you mentioned, it's about people's rights getting trampled. Those are legitimate concerns and should be voiced. But that kind of brings us to the First Amendment again. The right to free speech. And what are your thoughts? Are you concerned?
Very much so. I think part of the reason, and I can't pretend to speak for everybody, but I have the murder of Charlie Kirk has touched off a nerve with a lot of people, and tragic things happen often in this life, and that's unfortunate. And people who are young are taken from us too soon. People with potential that seem limitless, that they're taken from us, and they're taken from us too often. But this incident specifically, I think this assassination spoke to so many people because it seemed to be about free speech. It seemed to be about engaging in debate, and the fact that it was happening with young people. Charlie Kirk himself was very young; he was only 31 years old. But I think probably the most famous thing that he did, and you can go on social media even now and see the reels of him debating with young kids on college campus. Prove me wrong. And I think that people, and this is probably true on the left and the right. I feel more comfortable speaking probably more on the right-leaning side of this issue because that's just the world I live in. I think people feel like that's not happening enough, and that big institutions are prohibiting that kind of exchange of ideas. And I suspect that if you put it in those terms to people on the left, they would say, absolutely, we have to have that. There's very few things more American than an exchange of ideas. The only thing more American than that probably is getting to be angry with the government if you want to be, and not having to be afraid of what might happen.
And it just, I don't think we can overstate how horrific it is that an answer to disliking Charlie Kirk, whatever your motivation is to take a gun and shoot him. That is beyond reprehensible. I don't even know how to describe it. And it's a reality that this country has dipped its toe in way too often. Going all the way back, of course, to Lincoln, and I won't try to catalog all of them, but more recently, JFK and RFK and, Martin Luther King. We've seen these assassinations, and man, I'm old. I'm much older than you. I was a child when those things happened. I was a baby, 8 months old to the day when JFK was killed. Obviously, I have no memory of it. But my point about that is I can only imagine in those times how insecure and volatile things felt.
Oh.
And so I think today we all need to realize, as terrible as this is, there have been equally terrible things before, and we have persevered. We can persevere.
We can persevere. I think that and you're right. I did not live through those times. I was born in 1982, and I think that's important because from certainly the assassination of President Kennedy all the way to the assassination attempt on President Reagan early in his presidency. I mean, you do. I mean, it is just, there are touch points. You watch any documentary about the 60s and 70s, and you're juxtaposing great music and awful things happening in America, right? It's like, oh, here's Jefferson Airplane, and then boom, here's Robert Kennedy getting killed in California. And I think you have these things. It's not just President Kennedy. It's obviously Dr. King, Robert Kennedy. You have George Wallace, also was almost killed in 1972.
One of Manson's women, Squeaky Fromm, tried to kill Ford.
And another woman tried to kill President Ford too. That guy tried to, I think, take charge of an airplane and was going to fly it into the White House when Nixon was president. And then, you have, I guess, got to be, if he's not the only, certainly one of the only members of Congress that's ever been killed in the line of duty in Jonestown. Leo Ryan, and then you have Reagan, and you have this whole era,
right, and Steve Scalise. And
we are seeing, to me, part of the reason that people are looking back to those volatile times with such fear is we are now, I mean, we had this a little bit of a reprieve in, kind of in the 80s, and certainly in the 90s. I think now people look back and say, wow, politics then, it seemed like such a blood sport, but
those were the days.
Those were the days, absolutely. And so, you have 9/11, and then you're just off to the races with these foreign policy issues. But again, domestic, you talk about Scalise, there's been lots of other things. And then now with what happened in Butler, Pennsylvania to President Trump, and then you have this with Charlie Kirk. I think people are frightened, but they're also angry, and that is a volatile combination. And I mean, this country, I mean, it wasn't like the Civil War. And when people say it is, you kind of want to say, if you know anything about the Civil War, like you do, or I do, or most people, kind of say, well, it wasn't that bad. But this country really kind of tore itself apart. And you're seeing that now, where, I mean, I made a joke about social media earlier, but you get on social media and you just see people just saying things they'd never say to somebody in their face. I mean, you and I could sit in a room for 2 days and solve pretty much any policy issue that we disagreed on, I think, if we were sitting and talking about it. Now, there'd be points where, we just wouldn't give, but we'd have a civil conversation about it, and we would at least come up with some solutions.
And even the points where reasonable people who collaborate say, nope, this is my position and you're way over here. You're right. This is mine and you're way over here. Still understand that at the end of the day, you got to go somewhere. They
got to go somewhere. We
that.
have to. And I mean, when people send us, and I love this story that, you mentioned I worked for Jodey Arrington, and I got to spend a lot of time with him, and he would go and speak to all kinds of different groups. And obviously for me, a lot of my experiences with him were early in his tenure. And so the campaign trail for him was very fresh because he had a contested primary, a runoff, and then, okay, now, with a new president, I'm going to go be a new congressman. But he would say he had soaked in so much commentary from his constituents because he'd been going to all these meetings and campaigning so hard. And so when he'd come back in the district, he'd often remind people, probably sometimes the exact people who said this to them, that he would say, I heard 2 things from people, most of all. They'd say, go up there, you ran as a conservative, stick to conservative principles. Do not compromise, do what you said you were going to do, stand up for West Texas values, push the policy positions that you said you were going to push, do what you said you were going to do, stick to your principles. And he said sometimes it was the same person would say, go up there and get some stuff done. Don't go up there and just do nothing and just, I don't know, just sit in your office. I mean, they wanted things done, but they wanted them done in a principled, and in Jodey's case, a principled conservative way. And if politics worked like that, I think when it does work like that, I think it's great. What I think you're seeing now, and why you and I are having a conversation about people's constitutional rights and things like that, is that there is no good faith assumption on the part of the United States government for a lot of people. And they are frustrated. They feel like issues have gone unaddressed for too long. They've been given lip service, but no action's been taken. And so you have that volatility of people who just have no trust in institutions. And that is, I mean, you've seen it. That seeped into the private sector. That seeped into all aspects of life. The one thing that, Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders may have in common is this idea that if something, they may disagree on what it is, but if something gets too big, the little guy gets hurt. I think you're seeing that volatility play out. And then people they're not having face-to-face conversations. They're not interacting. They're not as social. They're not connected to a group anymore. And so these feelings, this anger festers.
Well, in fact,
and the combination is volatile.
We have coming here in a couple of weeks on the podcast, a guy that just wrote a book about that very dynamic and about the concern about where digital media and social media is headed. Because if all you do is go down into that rabbit hole and you don't have redemptive relationships, or even, I wouldn't even necessarily say redemptive, because that sounds kind of big. It's just uh, uh, relationships that bring you back into a sense of normalcy. And all you do is go deeper and deeper into the rabbit holes. That's trouble. And political, I don't know that we still understand what all of his political motives were. But this kid, just imagine, had he lived in a time prior to when he could sit at his computer for 20 hours a day, he might have turned out very different. Apparently very bright, raised by a good family. I don't know, man. It just seems to me. And so as we draw the conclusion, here's a great segue question. And I mean it. It sounds like I don't know what it sounds like, but are you hopeful? Or generally speaking, are you hopeful? You got 4 young kids, man.
I am hopeful. And I'll my friends that know I'm a history buff will make fun of me for not remembering who said this, but nobody's ever won money betting against the United States. That's just a fact. There is absolutely nothing wrong with this country that we ourselves can't fix, and that's true of the United States. That's true of Texas. It's certainly true of House District 71. Whoever they choose to send to Austin, and of course I hope it's me, they're going to expect problems to be addressed. Now, they may have a specific solution in mind, and that's fine. I mean, that's part of the campaign process. They're sending a representative to impart their will onto the process in Austin. But I think that is the expectation, and I'm incredibly hopeful that things will get better and that we will, find our way to solutions on any number of issues. I think where a lot of us tend to disagree is, maybe the style we use to get there, maybe the end results. I mean, there's areas of disagreement, and to try to paper over that and say we can find common ground on everything is naive, and again, I think leads to distrust, because certain people want their elected officials to do very specific things. So I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but yes, I'm incredibly optimistic, and I'm not sure, you hear this a lot from politicians and for people running from office about the consequences of any given election. They're always consequential. This is always big. This work that we're being asked to do, and that some of us are on a job interview to do, is always going to be important and always going to be consequential. But yes, I'm absolutely optimistic for the future.
Great conversation.
Thank you.
Enjoyed it.
I enjoyed it as well. Thank you so much for having me.
And I anticipate, who knows, I guess if we could see the future, we'd be in different occupations. But
sure.
But I anticipate a runoff in the after the March 3rd
yes.
primary election. So whenever that happens, if it's a 2-person runoff, which it probably would be.
Yes. Top 2 vote getters.
I would love to see. Is that baked in? It'll be the top 2 if it's a runoff. Okay.
If you get if nobody gets more than 50%, it'll be the top 2. Yes, sir.
So I would love it if you're one of those 2, you and whomever would come right back, and we'll have 2 microphones and sit and have this conversation again.
I would love that very much, and I promise that I will let them and you talk a little bit more.
Hey, no, but what you probably really hope is that you win and there's no runoff.
If anybody tells you they want a runoff, we should not vote for that person, because I think all of us, especially come March 3rd, will be ready for some kind of resolution.
Jay Hardaway.
Thank you so much, Danny. I appreciate it.
Thank you. And by the way, you're the best dressed person in the history of the podcast.
Well, I appreciate that.
You look great.
I appreciate that.
You remind me, I mean this is a total compliment. Your outfit reminds me of the Ed Helms character on The Office, very buttoned up, you know. You got it going on. You got it going
Andy.
on. Andy, thank you. I couldn't think Andy.
That's funny.
And you can give it back to me and say, well, you know what? You remind me of Stanley, or
There
even
you
worse,
go.
the Michael Scott character. All right, Jay Hardaway, candidate for Texas House District 71 to be our representative. Thank you for being our guest here on Abilene People.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you having me.
And thank you for joining us here on this episode. I want to give a shout out to our ace producer, Travis Corrigan. And he, in fact, stay tuned, because when we have that author and expert in social media and digital technology and the future of the web come on, our producer, Travis Corrigan, will also be a guest that very day. So you'll see him right here. So we have a lot of interesting guests lined up in the very near future, but they'll have to do well to top today's interesting person in Jay Hardaway. So thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time. I'm your host, Danny Sims, right here on Abilene People and BigCountryHomepage.com. Thanks.